spoken to 1.5 million people worldwide. And when I was going through the heartland, I realized one thing. It's hot out there sometimes. So I used to laugh about that all the time when I was on the stage talking to people. First of all, let me thank you, Tania, for allowing me to come here and spend some time with you. I love what you're doing. I love your courage. You know, I was like, you're my Fannie Lou Hamer. You know, you're always standing out there speaking the truth. You know, not the power, but speaking the truth that people that want to hear. I don't like to use all of that stuff, but you're always standing up. And I'm glad we met that day because we stayed in contact. I got to tell you, it's hard to stay in contact with me because I'm always on a plane somewhere talking to people in airports. But she talked to me several times, and I said to everyone, because everyone was asking me, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Florida. You're coming back tonight? I said, yeah, because I gave that young lady my word that I was going to be here, and she's one hell of a woman. I thank you for allowing me your group, your team, I just also want to say thank you to your team that helped you to put this on, because I grew up in a community where we did this work all the time. You know, so, you know, my family, we're developers, you know, we build black communities in this country. We understand what urban planning is, the right kind of urban planning. Amen. And we understand that community is paramount to everything that we do. That builds family, that builds faith, that gives us the opportunity to be able to be connected with each other. I think we've lost that over the last decade, but I think we're finding our way back there. So what Lexa is doing, I don't mind standing up here and standing up with you because it's about freedom, it's about your faith, right? And it's about family. And you know, we've been having this conversation about what a conservative is. I find that fascinating because I don't get caught up in the narrative about who's a conservative or not, and if you're a white conservative, you're a black conservative. All I do is always point to my wall when I see Frederick Douglass. I said, that was a conservative. When I point to my other wall and see Harriet Tubman, that's a conservative. When I point to my other wall and see Malcolm X, that's a conservative. Now, what is that? That's faith, family, and freedom, and that's ownership. Ownership of your own agency, ownership of your own voice, ownership of where you live at. And I think as black Americans, and all of us in this room that might not be black Americans, we got away from what that is. And we've allowed other groups to define us based on their fears. Their fears. Not based on the truth, but their fears. And I find that fascinating because as black Americans in particular, especially when you were talking about the national anthem, I was someplace one day and I got a call from a friend of mine. And he was like, well, Kevin, you know, you're with those white people every day. But no, this is a great story. I gotta tell you, I think everybody should really appreciate this. I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. I said, because where I come from, where I grew up at, I never had to deal with that. And I grew up in a community that was 85% black. 85% black. And in my household, we were focused on building our communities. I didn't have time to deal with this whole narrative of white and black because we knew earlier on in my life that that was bullcrap. Because everything in this country is not about race. Now, we've had some race issues in this country, and we're dealing with them every day. We've had some really serious issues as descendants of slaves in this country, but we're dealing with them every day. But I'm here to tell all of you today that I am not a victim. Right. And I will not allow my friends like Yvette and all of us to be wrapped up in that narrative where we are victims. Because victimhood, somebody said this the other day and I thought it was interesting, and I stole it from him. He said, victimhood is a corporation in this country. Yes. I mean, that was very, very well said. But then he said something after that the victimhood, as victims, we eat at the trough of the grievance industrial complex. I thought that was brilliant. I said, find that guy for me. Because when you think about this country and you think about the conditions, in particular of the black community, is that we have now staged ourselves as permanent victims. And we have to break away from that. We have to break that dream spell. That dream spell has ruined our communities. That dream spell has ruined our children. That dream spell has ruined our families. That dream spell has taken our ability to look out into the world and conquer it based on our own terms. Yeah. Not because you're Democrat, not because you're Republican, not because you're white, not because you're black. Let me tell you something in this room, because I always laugh about this. I probably have more privilege than all of you in this room. So I was always fascinated by the discussion when people were saying, you know, white Americans have more privilege than me. I was laughing. I spoke to people around this country. I laughed. I said, I have more privilege than all of you. Because I had a family. My family taught me to believe in God. My family told me to stand up for myself. My family told me that ownership was paramount. Not just to own something, but to make sure that owned who I was as a human being. On the great temple of Luxor, it says, what? Man, know thyself. And as a young man in my community, I was given that insight to know myself. And not to be defined by political parties, not be defined by what church I went to, or be defined by who I am as a Black American male, which is really something, right? When you say Black American male. Because I've gotten some flack about that until I started talking and running my mouth. I said, I've been to Africa, I've worked in Africa, I've been all around the world. But my ancestors fought for this country. My ancestors' bodies will come out of times for this country. My Black body staged up the success of this country. Now, that doesn't disqualify anyone else. But I understood that other story was bullcrap. And that I want to claim what my ancestors fought in every war. And when I stood up one day and talked about the American flag, oh man, you had to see the calls I got. But see, I'm cold-blooded gangster about those calls. You don't call me with nonsense. I said, well, let me get this straight. Buffalo Soldiers, the American War, the Civil War, the Vietnam War, every war we fought in to preserve this country. Now, it's very interesting. We preserve this country. They say, well, we hate this country. I say, move out. Because I know, I've been everywhere, and I'm not leaving here. I've been to Europe, I've been to Africa, I've been to Japan, I've been everywhere, and I'm not leaving here. Now, we got some issues. I think we can resolve that if we stop listening to the garbage that's hope we're being sold every day. I think we can transcend that if we seek God's face for the right answer. I think we can actually build a new world that's based not on fear, but on God courage. See, to be able to come through this, you have to find your God courage. And when you find your God courage, that means you're seeking something greater than yourself. And I think that is what's happened to us as a nation. We have lost our God courage. We have lost our God consciousness. We have lost our ability to see beyond what they're selling us. And I'm not here to make you comfortable. I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you want me to think I'm making up, you got the wrong guy. Because my parents and my grandparents taught me earlier on, you are defined by what you create for yourself. So when I look around after 58 years, because I challenge my brothers and sisters all the time, I said, let me get this straight. Malcolm died for us. Martin died for us. Ida B. Wells was running for our life. Fannie Lou Hamer. I mean, everybody. Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela. All of these men, all of these women, even the founding fathers of this country, they did all of this for us to turn out to look like this. And we comfortable with that? And you're still selling that garbage. I can't go into that community because they white. I can't go into that community because they white. They don't want this. Absolute foolishness. And you buy it every day, and that's why you've subjugated yourself into perpetual poverty and fear. And you do it every day. I hear it every day. I hear it every day. When I was growing up, I used to go and listen to all the great theologians, great historians, Dr. Van Sertima, Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, and all of them were talking about nation building, principles, morality, and what's happening now. Our young girls lost their way because men are not in the homes. Our young men have lost their way because we have been playing with them and not saying to them they are directly responsible for what happens in their family, what happens in their community, and what happens to their children. We have to stop making excuses. When I started on this journey, I was at my dining room table, because I've been pretty successful in my life, but it's not even relevant anymore. I was at my dining room table saying to myself, what have I done? What have I done? The game that my parents told me not to be involved in, I was involved. I was only worrying about my projects. I was only worried about my family. I was only worried about my space. And I felt like I just let everybody down. I said, this is not what I was born to do. I knew that, but it was easy for me to articulate a vision, go in the room, pitch it, make money, and do what I wanted to do. What a false life. It was absolutely empty. No matter what trappings I had on my wall, no matter how much I could talk about what I've done, I did nothing. I did nothing for humanity. I did nothing for young men in my community because they were seeking those answers, but they were going in the wrong direction. And so this young man walks in my house. I ran him out, basically. He said, Kevin, there's a problem in Trenton, New Jersey. There's about 10,000 parents fighting for their religious exemption. I said, what do you mean fighting for their religious exemption? What American right now will be fighting for their religious exemption? And I was like, well, okay, that sounds good. Go talk to Gail. My wife was elected for 20 some odd years. She's brilliant. Go talk to her. I blew him off. Because I was basically tired of surrendering my voice to people that were not going to fight for their own. I was not doing that anymore. I said, I'm done. I fired myself. So the young man wouldn't let me go. He was like, Kevin, I said, listen, man, I raised you. You're a good young man. Go out there and do your job. So he gives me the document. I read through the document because I've written public policy all my life. I looked at him. I said, okay, let me tell you what I think. I said, go up to my office, get a highlight. I circled it, gave it back to him. He said, oh, great. I said, now, this is how you work both sides of the house because I come from a political family. I've been in politics all my life. I'm an insider. I know how they operate. And he was a master. He actually saved the day. This young man saved the day in New Jersey to make sure parents had the right to use religious exemptions to protect them for the global tyrants that believe that they have control over your bodies. That young man did it. Now, still is stupid, guys. I'm not that fast sometimes. He comes back, he says, well, Kevin, I need you to come with me to go to an event that Bobby Kennedy was speaking at. I said, look, I'm getting ready to play golf. I said, I'm not coming. And so my wife looks at me, she said, oh, yes, you are. She said, you need to go hear this because she was in a meeting several weeks ago, I think 2 weeks or a week before, I think it was a week, and she said, you really need to go see this, Kevin. So I was like, yeah. I looked at him. So I get in the car and I go to Connecticut. And I hear his presentation. I didn't say one word, I just listened. Because I've been in those spaces before. I understood what he was saying about the impact that Big Pharma was having on the black community, on black children, and autism, and all the horrible things that I knew because I did hospital acquisitions. A lot of people didn't know that. So I'm sitting there and I'm listening to him, and it was a game changer for me. Not right there that second, but it was a game changer for me. And then I went on the road. I never stopped. I started talking to legislators, but then the thing that I found that was so insidious about this, that they were black American legislators voting against their own people, taking the power from their own people, turning their children over to an industry that was only focused on profits and death. When I walked in there and saw that, then I got pissed. And I've never stopped. 350,000 miles. I've been home, I think, 72 days in 2 years. I've spoken to millions of people online, across the world, and guess what? I got some good news for you. People are waking up. Now, I tell you that because it's critically important that you all understand that this country and all of you are not alone. People are waking up every single day. And I gotta tell you, in my community, people say, well, Kevin, I want black people should be more involved. I said, they are. They're listening. But the challenge today is no more listening. We have to get out into the public square and claim our power. Not what they told us to do, because I'm always fascinated by that. You know, I listen to conversations all the time, and people say, well, they. When you say they, you're a slave. When you say they, that means you give up your power. When you say they, that means you're using up an excuse, and using an excuse while they destroy your family, destroy your community, destroy your life, because you're always blaming it on somebody else. They. They means you have given up everything. But when you say we, and that's what they don't want us to do. See, this group is not supposed to be together. We're not supposed to be standing together. We're not supposed to be conversating and talking about the issues that are impacting all of us. That's That's what they were afraid of. So the word we scares the hell out of them.
Yep.
We. We means freedom. We means hope. We means faith. We means family. We means what? We are in control of who we are. We control our bodies. We control our agency. We are Americans and we love this country and we're going to fight for it. Now, some of you say, well, because I'm still fascinated by this. The most intelligent people, I got all kinds of intelligent people in my life, they dumber than a doorknob. And if you're listening to them, you're in trouble. Now, when you go back, because I had to really think about this, because when I was on the road, I was talking about COVID all day. And I understood what that was about earlier on. And I realized that majority of us were enslaved at a whole nother level. I mean, you all think you're free. You might really, really need to rethink that. Because a lot of us, because of fear, allowed those evil people to take our power away from us, to trap us into perpetual fear, and then to turn over our bodies to them. So when I hear people talk about systemic and structural racism, I bust out laughing. I say, wait a minute, did you just get this primitive biologic? Well, you just born into it. The same thing you saying that is impacting you and stopping you from doing something, you just turned your body over to. You are now a slave. Think about that for a half of a second. So we use all of these terms, we use all of this language, but guess what? You don't even know what it means. Because when you allow your schools to fail, when you allow your families to be broken, when you allow these institutions to be built that have stripped us of our humanity, guess what? How could you say structural racism, institutional racism? You're buying into it every day by the mere fact of the language that you use. The language that you use. You don't even know, half of you don't even know why you're mad at each other. You really don't. You need to stop watching too much TV. You better start waking up. So for me, my journey changed me. And it was something that I realized, I think I might have been in Montana somewhere, and I'm looking out in this crowd, and I said, you know what? I'm changing up. This ain't about none of that. You know what it's about? It's about us learning to love each other. Finding some respect for each other. Not being defined and told how to feel about each other. And you know what? Martin would have never been successful in getting that message through if he didn't look at it from a love perspective, from a human perspective, from a family perspective, from having faith to say that, guess what, we might have differences, but if we come together, we can beat them. Because it was always about them. It was always about that group we're fighting now. And you know why we're fighting again? Because we all went back to sleep. The problem with all of us in this room is that we are just as culture corrupt as the people that we're fighting. Why are we back dealing with it again? But I believe something is unique about this time. Let me tell you what I think. I think that all of us, no matter what age we are, there was something put in your soul when you were coming through that womb of your mom into the light. Now, some of us came into the light of pain and horror, but some of us came into light with balance in our lives. But there was something that God placed in all of you for this time. That's why you're here. You're not here to hear me. You're here because you know that something's wrong. You know in your heart that something is wrong. Every morning you get up, you feel it. And that's why you're here. We are the tribe that will finally break tyranny's back forever. Because you can't let it come back. And they're never going to stop until we break it. Now, all of you that go home and say, oh, those people over there, you know what, stay home because we don't want you. So I'm telling people now, I'm telling you guys, some people you just need to leave right there. And stop trying to fix them. You're always trying to fix people. Now they're coming after our children. Now they're telling you, you can't send your kid to school where you pay taxes unless you take an experimental biologic that will further destroy and eviscerate both communities. And you know what? You still is taking your kids to those schools. And you're looking for religious exemptions instead of saying, hell no. You will not have my children. You're still trying to figure it out. You're still trying to over-intellectualize it. I am stunned by that. Take your kids out of those schools.
Yep.
And guess what? All of those universities we send our schools to, our kids to, Harvard, Princeton, all of these HBCUs, all of these schools, they have trained our kids to be slaves.
Right.
You've got to take them out of those schools. The universities have indoctrinated our kids with the most horrific thinking where they don't even respect you as a parent.
Come on.
You got kids telling you, oh, Mom, Fauci's right. You're wrong. Hey, Dad, you know what? Gates is right. You're wrong. Oh, Dad, you know what? You don't know what you're talking about, Mom. I said, listen, I don't know what kind of household you had. I said, but my daughters, I told you do anything that disgraced his family, change your name. My daughters looked at me like, Dad, what's going on with you? I'm like, really seriously. Because there has been so many people before me that brought me forth to be free today. And guess what? That's important to me. And what we've done, we've allowed these people to strip our kids of heart and soul and consciousness. Look what we've done. And none of us want to take responsibility for it. We want to keep saying they, Bill Gates, they, Fauci, FDA, they. No, we have given our power to these people. And we have to take it back. That's why I wanted to be here today. I don't get a chance to always come and really have a real community meeting with people. I grew up that way. I grew up in my community. I lived in my community. When I was a kid, the Nation of Islam built my community. And then after I got older, we built our community. You know what they're doing now? All of the black elected officials? They're destroying it. They're slaves. They're destroying it. And none of you want to tell the truth. They're modern day slave catchers. They sell garbage and soap every day to our community, and you know what? You're too damn polite. They shouldn't be allowed to come into our community. And then you elect them every day, you get up every day, and you say, well, the reason I'm electing him is because he's a Democrat. What, are you kidding me? You still are voting that way? That's how your brain works? Well, we need to put them on the ship to send them back somewhere. You are still voting that way? You don't understand that the most worst legislation that's ever been created has been created by that group? And they commoditize off your fear every day. And all of you always making excuses. Excuses. Every day I get up, I hear excuses. And enough. We should erase that. We have to come together and bridge America to save this country, to save our community, to save our families. And that's by telling the truth. We've all been slaves to them. All of us. A young man told me yesterday, he said, Kevin, before I came, he said, Kevin, I want you to write a check for the school. I said, I will not. He said, well, Kevin, it's HBCU. I said, I will not. He said, well, Kevin, I can't believe that. I said, well, why? I said, let me ask you a question. What's your endowment in that school? Let me ask you a question. Did all of you buy up that university land in the last 2 decades, 3 decades? Let me ask you a question. Do you know what curriculum they're teaching in that school? Let me ask you a question. Why so many men in those schools, all of them now, but I'm just talking about why so many of those men in those schools come out of there broken? Why so many of those young girls come out and they are down a pathway about understanding what family is? You didn't get that check. Because I was making a point. Institutions are important, but they have to be built on principles. We have lost our moral compass in this country. And I'm telling you guys, I am sick of it. Now, I know all of you have been glued to your TV. I haven't. I know y'all all been, I love this. You know, Roe versus Wade. Everybody's up in arms about that, and I find it hilarious. And I'm saying to myself, majority of the people that are talking about it don't even know what they're talking about. Majority of the people don't even understand that any black American in particular that's talking about Roe versus Wade should be ashamed of themselves. Because you have to understand why it was created. To eviscerate black family. So when they say Planned Parenthood, I say, oh, that's not Planned Parenthood. That's family destruction. And then when you talk about Margaret Sanger, then when you talk about the Negro Project, then when you talk about the destruction of the black family, anytime I see any black woman out there talking about Roe versus Wade, I look at them like they're crazy. And you know why they're doing it? Because we didn't teach them. We didn't educate them. Kids are not even reading anymore. They're not even writing anymore. They don't even understand what family is because we are allowing them to be defined by what they see on TV. The black entertainment class of the 21st century is a failure. The black athletic class in this country is a failure. The black political class is a failure. And we don't want to tell the truth.
Right.
We have to shame the devil and tell the truth. Now people say to me, well, Kevin, what about white people? I said, I'm not talking about you. What the hell are you talking about? I'm so sick of that. It's like when you talk about what's wrong in the black community, they bring up Trump. I'm like, what does Trump have to do with this? The man only was elected 4 years. I said, but your black president, what did he do? And my wife is a staunch Democrat. She was like, Kevin, you're right about that. My family now, they're like, hey, Kev, you're right about that. Because I asked one question. And this is very important. We have to start doing this when we talk to people. We have to ask them questions. Now get out and say, okay, here's the question. Tell me one public policy that Donald Trump created to impact black Americans in a negative way in the last 4 years. And don't tell me what he did with his father in Brooklyn. I don't want to hear that. I'm talking as a president. What did he do to strip you of your rights? What did he do to strip you of your ability to earn? What did he do? Now, when you ask that question, nobody can answer. Then I ask another question. Well, tell me what Biden did. Well, I know what he did. I know everything he did. So you're talking about systemic racism, structural racism, but you put a segregationist in the White House. Right. And you gave him 90% of your vote. Whatever that was. I don't know who cares.
1%.
But think about the logic. Think about the logic when you talk like that. It just unnerves me. So now I'm challenging everybody. It's not about race. It's not about class. It's about power and control. And they want power and control over us. The World Economic Forum, all of it's true now. See, the greatest conspiracy is ignorance. See, they want you to be, that's why they throw the word conspiracy out there. Oh, he's a conspiracy. I am absolutely a conspiracy. You're absolutely right. Because I read for a living. I study for a living. So I'm going to find the truth. I just want us to take a deep breath and take a look at ourselves in the mirror when we go home and say, how can we get better? How can we be better? How can we bridge America beyond what they're selling us? Everybody, please stand up. I gotta get to the airport. You know, when I was talking to my family, I like to get a little bit. Well, anyway, I apologize a little bit. So listen, I do this everywhere I go because I realized over the last 2 years what they were doing. They were stripping us of connection. They were isolating us. The church that I once believed in, but I gotta spend one more second to stay right there. I gotta say one more thing. The black church that I grew up around and in was focused on building community, building a strong sense of faith, building a moral code that will guide us to be able to communicate and live with other people, giving us some guiding principles of faith, family, freedom, and ownership. The black church today is not that. It is a proxy of the Democratic Party. It is a proxy for the globalists. It is a proxy that works against us every day. They zoomed in Jesus, and as soon as they opened up the church, they took the devil's money and sold us death. And you all go there, you tithe every day, you talk about Jesus. Let me tell you something. You better find God in here. You better find your God courage. And you better tell those pastors, be gone. Because they're not doing what the black church did. They're not doing what the Nation of Islam did. They're not doing what great leaders did to build community. Not saying that you are bad. They took the time to build community. I live in a community where we owned everything. we own nothing today. Because we bought the devil's deal. We left ownership. We chose politics over ownership. That's where we went wrong. And we have to correct that by telling the truth. Now, everybody hold hands, please. Everybody hold hands, please. Now, it's very important that you understand why this is so critically important. Bridging America is very, very important because that's not what they want us to do. They want us fighting every day. One person has one thing. Now, we are human beings fighting not to save our groups, but to save humanity. For our children. What kind of world do you want for these kids? Look what we've allowed to happen. It bothers me deeply. So I want you to look at each other and I want you to do me a favor. This is important because we're going to scare the hell out of them. They don't want to see this. I want you to look at each other and say, I love you. Can you see that? Can you see that? The second thing I want you to do, I got a couple more. The second thing I want you to do, no, I'm not. The second thing I want you to do, the second thing I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes for me, please. Close your eyes. Don't be afraid. I'm not going to eat you. Close your eyes, and I want you to think about what kind of world do you want for you, but most importantly, what kind of world do you want for your children? Do you want a world of bondage, segregation, fear? Or do you want a world of freedom where our kids can thrive and produce and be loving human beings the way we are supposed to be raising our kids? Is that the kind of world you want? Just think about it. For tomorrow, so tomorrow when you get up, that's your action. To work on building a new world. Not the world they want for us. Not the fear they sell to us. Not the hopelessness they sell. But what kind of world we want to live in tomorrow. And this third thing I want you to do is to inhale God and exhale fear. Because that's critically important. Because we've been living in fear. We have lost our God consciousness. We have lost our connectedness. That's why I'm asking you to hold hands. That's why I'm asking you to inhale God and exhale fear. Because God is in you. And the last thing I want you to do is hug each other. Well, you see, that's very interesting. It's very interesting. Now you see that?
Gotta hug my family back here.
Oh,
you're so cute.
I know, brother.
Oh, you're a good son.
But isn't it?
Nah, you're a big nine.
You do that.
Look who's here.
That breaks the vow.
Oh, buddy.
Everybody else see that? They don't want that.
Yeah, he's got it. Yeah.
And your new tribe should be about one thing: faith, family, and freedom and ownership. We are one new tribe now. That's what they don't want. The devil's losing. The devil's losing. But the only way we finish it off is if we find something deep in ourselves to capture the moment. To capture the moment. Young man, capture the moment. Don't worry about your friends. Young man, young woman, capture the moment. We have the sickest community in America, and we're still talking about systemic racism. What the hell? We sick because we sick. We sick because we bought what they sold us. And today, we stop buying it. Mm-hmm. God bless you. Yeah.
Before we were not dismissed, we got more of a show. Don't go anywhere. We have another